Clovis, California is one of the top rated places to live in all of California, but it's still definitely not for everyone. So if you're looking to move to Clovis, California and you want to know what it's like living here, here are 9 reasons that you might want to avoid living in Clovis, California. One of the big industries in the Central Valley is agriculture, which is a great thing. Farmers markets are amazing. They have a lot of fresh produce, raisins, oranges, strawberries. The fields are colorful and you can see many different types of fruits and vegetables. But along with that comes severe allergies, especially from the springtime and the fall when you can see all of the trees blossoming. It's a beautiful sight, but my gosh, the allergies are awful. I was tested myself recently because I get sinus infections and my nose gets all stuffy, and if I go outside, my eyes get immediately itchy. And it turns out I'm allergic to almost everything environmentally in the valley. Trees, grass, mold, pollen, you name it, if it's outside, I'm probably allergic to it. So I can personally attest that going outside in the spring and fall, especially when, everything's blooming or the trees are starting to disintegrate for the winter, it's in the air and you're breathing it in. This doesn't affect everyone, but why is it such a bad thing in the first place? Well, one of the major draws for Clovis is that there's so many recreation opportunities. There's bike paths, parks, lots of stuff to enjoy in those times of year. But if you have to plan your day around whether or not you're going to swell up, or if your eyes are going to be itchy, or how sneezy, or it can be a whole ordeal, and it's definitely not for everyone. Hey, but if anyone out there knows some home remedies on how to beat these allergies, let me know, because I am always looking for something new to try. Hey, Lord knows taking Claritin every day is not working. So if you know anything better than that, feel free to let me know. Next up on the list is one of the major cons of living in the valley. This is going to be the long, hot summers. Summers are hot. It's an inferno here in the valley. From about May all the way sometimes through September, we're seeing temperatures up in the upper 90s and up in the 100s for a good portion of the summer. Every year I tell myself, it can't be that bad, right? We did it last year. And that first week of the 100s is miserable. At the time of writing this video, we're looking at May, and we're going to see the first day in the 90s in about 6 days, and I'm dreading it because I know it's only going to be up from there, and the rest of the year is going to be miserable. It's bad. I actually used to work at Wild Water Adventure, which is one of the local Clovis water parks. Heat exhaustion and heat stroke were some major ailments that we dealt with on a daily basis. Of course, you can sort of get used to it as you've lived here for a while, and you know how to prepare, like drinking water, eating a good breakfast, but those scorching days will sneak up on you. If you're outside doing yard work, when my mom goes out to do yard work, she makes sure to let us know she's going to be out in the yard just in case, God forbid, something happens to her, because it gets hot. You can kind of get used to it, but it's more about learning how to manage that heat rather than getting used to how hot it actually is. I do want to throw in a little caveat here though. It is a dry heat because we are in the desert. I have family out in North Carolina, which is very humid, and Iowa, which is very humid. Some friends in the Bay Area, which isn't quite 100-degree weather, but it's still hot in comparison. And it still feels like you're melting out there too. I guess, silver lining, you don't sweat immediately, but it does feel like your skin is baking. Yeah, pick your poison on that one. The next up is going to be living the suburban lifestyle. We're on the edge of the countryside in Clovis. As you move further north and east, you're going to see some cows, some sheep, some horses as we get further east. If you're someone that's looking for that city lifestyle, you want to be right up next to the action, there are better places for that than Clovis. There's not a whole lot of nightlife here. If you're looking for the club scene or just going out in general, Fresno, that's a better area, or maybe some other areas of California in general. But Clovis is known to be sort of a sleepy suburban area. Being a suburb, there's not a whole lot of traffic, especially compared to some of the other areas. A suburb like Clovis has almost no traffic. I'm thinking about Highway 168, which cuts all the way across Clovis. Sure, there's going to be rush hour, but even rush hour, that's Clovis traffic. Yeah, it's busy, but if you've ever experienced traffic anywhere else in California, it's not so bad. But the truth is, the suburban lifestyle is not for everyone. You see a lot of these newer developments, and people say they might feel cookie cutter, or like they lack the personality that you might find in a bigger city. And when you look at what you get in California versus what you might get in another state, or at least what you could get in another state. I know the housing markets have changed quite a bit. A lot of people say that California living is a little bit less in terms of, lot size, square footage on the house, but it's all relative. I actually have a friend who lives in Fresno. He's lived here most of his life, and when I started making videos and exploring Clovis, I took him around and just showed him some of the places in Clovis. And there are places that him living here his entire life didn't even know existed. Tucked away off in the countryside, whole pockets of master planned communities. I was honestly surprised with how excited he got for seeing all these new locations, because living here my whole life, I take for granted knowing about all these different places. Now, because all these neighborhoods can vary dramatically in terms of cost of living and amenities, this is exactly why it's important to give me a call or a text message early so I can listen to exactly what you need in your property and what you want in terms of amenities in the area. And I love helping people out just like you find their new home. If you're looking for that blend of city and country, Clovis has it in droves, but if you're looking for that more urban, deep in the city lifestyle, Clovis might not be for you. Now, this next topic is a major point of contention here in the Valley, and that's the cost of living in Clovis. The average sales price of a home in Clovis, California over the last 60 days is $535,000. Now on Zillow, we see that over the last year, the sales price on average has been about $407,000 in Fresno. So Clovis is actually substantially higher in terms of sales price of a home. But if you look at the average price of home in California, it's actually substantially higher than what you might find in Clovis. And this is why you see a lot of people moving from the Bay Area or San Diego, San Francisco, Sacramento, down into the Clovis area, because even though it's higher for the Central Valley, it's significantly lower in some of these major metropolitan areas that you're going to find in California. There's been an influx of people moving here for that reason, and many of the locals might feel uneasy, or they look for someone to blame in that regard, and they'll blame these people moving from the more expensive areas and buying up the property. But the truth is, this is happening everywhere in the United States. When you look at some of the grass is always greener areas that people have been relocating to, Austin, Texas, Tampa, Florida, northern Idaho, Boise, all these areas across the United States have seen an influx of people moving there and prices going up. Honestly, it's probably just inflation and the national average going up that's causing these areas to rise in price. The unfortunate truth is that wages versus the cost of living in Fresno, Clovis, even the Bay Area, they haven't quite caught up to each other. Working in Clovis as a bartender, I was making a pretty decent amount of money, and I didn't have a whole lot of expenses, so I was able to put some money away. But the sad truth is the cost of property in Clovis was still going to be very out of reach, even with a wage that was higher than what I would make with my degree. And I see that with a lot of my coworkers or people in industries that might not be making these outrageous wages. Now, the next topic, I need to be very, very careful how I present this one, because it is a hot button issue in any part of the world, and that's politics. And wait, don't click off yet. Hear me out. Without getting into any political affiliations, I can say that there are people on both sides of a debate that you might find in Clovis, California. For example, at the most recent Big Hat Days in Old Town Clovis, California, it's a big festival. There are lots of booths and vendors, food trucks, and all kinds of family entertainment. On one end of the festival, there was a booth that might have been of a red color and was selling apparel, and there might have been a booth on the other side of the festival that was of a blue color and was selling some apparel and merch. So there is political presence in Clovis, and you'll occasionally see people flying flags from their trucks or posters in their front yard, and for some people this might actually be a draw to Clovis. If you're not looking for it, you're not going to see it. If it's something that you're actively seeking out, you're probably going to find it. I try to stay away from politics in general. There's probably other people out there that feel the same. As someone who doesn't engage in politics, it hasn't been an issue for me. Next up on the list, it is a small town feel. Growing up here, I felt like everywhere I would go, I was going to see someone that I knew. It's not a small place. There are 124,000 residents in Clovis, and they're all pretty spread out. It is that suburban lifestyle where it's expanded out toward the east and up toward the north. So it's not like you're clustered in. Whenever I go out to the store, I'm always thinking, oh man, who am I going to see today? Or my wife is a school teacher in Clovis Unified. So whenever we go out to dinner, go catch a movie, go on a date, we always have to make sure that we're very presentable just in case we see any of her students or parents. Those comfy days to the grocery store are long gone. A lot of people compare the fast pace in California with something like the slower pace of the East or the Midwestern hospitality. And I've experienced both. And honestly, Clovis can compete. In my experience, most service workers are very friendly and willing to help. Of course, people are just people. I'm sure that you're going to encounter some rude people as well, but I'd say overall, especially being on the edge of the country, it's a very hospitable environment. But if you're looking for that more anonymity of being in a bigger city or not having to worry about running into your coworkers or people that you might know, it feels like a small town. Let me tell you, if you've lived here for any number of years, yeah, you'll be concerned about running into people you know. Now, I actually really love this next part, but it's not for everyone. You are trapped by mountains here. If you look past the Clovis countryside, you're going to see foothills, and on clear days, you can even see the Sierra Nevadas out in the distance. Especially after a light rain, you can see all of the snow on those mountains. It's a gorgeous sight. But a lot of people can feel a little claustrophobic being boxed in by those mountains, especially on those clear days when it's so visible and it feels like they're right there on your front door. Truthfully, living here my whole life, I took them for granted, and I didn't even notice them as much until I started traveling around more of the United States. Some of the flatter areas like Iowa, Nebraska. Yeah, you'll find similar areas like Salt Lake City or Colorado, but being right here in Clovis where you can hop on the 168, head up to Shaver Lake, Huntington Lake, or up to Yosemite, there are plenty of opportunities to go up into the mountains and hike. But it's not for everyone. Some people prefer a more open, flatter terrain. So if you don't want to be around the mountains, Clovis might not be for you. On the topic of being spread out in the countryside, you are close to everything but next to nothing. Talking about distances in Clovis and having access to the freeway as a pro for one area of Clovis and a con for the other, honestly, you're talking about a difference of 5 to 10 minutes, which isn't that big of a deal if you're just going across town once. But if you're making a major commute across town to work, or let's say you need to get to downtown Fresno, or you're in the very corner of Clovis up in Harlan Ranch and you need to drive all the way down to Old Town Clovis, it's going to take you a little bit. Even though it is a small town, it is spread out enough that it feels like you might not be close to the things that you want to be. In terms of proximity to Fresno, you're about a 20-minute drive to get across town, but walkability in neighborhoods, there are parks and grocery stores, but in terms of major amenities, you're probably going to have to drive. So if you're looking to walk everywhere, Clovis might not be the place. Well, there we go. If you can handle those 9 things, then maybe Clovis, California is a place that you can call home in the future. If you want to know a little bit more about Clovis, the cost of living, and everything you need to know, click this playlist right here and get started.